The Hunter Biden criminal trial on federal gun charges kicks off Monday, starting with jury selection. President Joe Biden's son arrived at the court in Wilmington, Delaware this morning, where the case will play out. Now, this comes nearly a year after his sweetheart plea deal fell apart. Special counsel David Weiss brought 3 charges against the first son: lying on a federal form when he bought a .38 caliber Colt Cobra Special in 2018, making a false statement to licensed gun dealers, and lying he was not a drug user, despite being addicted to cocaine at the time.
Hunter's facing up to 25 years in prison if found guilty of the 3 charges. Each count carries a maximum fine of $250,000 and 3 years of supervised release. Former Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger blasted the GOP for obsessing over Hunter. Let's watch.
The House Republicans have been spending the last year begging for a reason to go after, Joe Biden and to go after Hunter Biden. And they have been using, they wanted Hunter Biden in jail before they even knew what he was going to be charged with.
Similarly, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has come to Hunter's defense as well.
President Biden said last year, quote, "My son has done nothing wrong." The Wall Street Journal, as you see here, the editorial board said at the time, quote, "That's a highly inappropriate message from a president. He's essentially telling prosecutors that they are wrong to bring an indictment because Hunter is innocent of any criminal behavior." Why was it appropriate for President Biden to publicly comment on his son's case?
President Biden commented as a loving father, as I would hope any loving father would do.
Yeah, the timing of this is not great for Joe Biden. I saw some folks reacting at the end of last week when I was out of the studio that there was this really great news, obviously, for Democrats in Donald Trump's conviction. And almost immediately, Joe Biden chose to step on it by giving this speech about Gaza, which was broadly perceived by the pro-peace movement to be a misdirection, basically making the case that the ceasefire deal that had been on the table for ages, that Hamas had already been positive about, was somehow Bibi Netanyahu's deal. And Bibi, of course, comes out immediately and says, "I don't like this deal." And it was really egg on the face for Biden. So the meme was basically, let me remind you why you hate me.
Yeah.
in the moments after.
And my son's going to prison.
And now this is coming on the heels of the verdict as well. And so to the extent that Democrats have a ability to make the sort of a case about the criminality, the unique criminality of Donald Trump, this does, I think, have the possibility of taking some of the wind out of the sails. I will say the other side of it, though, is that if this goes forward and Hunter Biden is convicted by a jury of his peers, I do think that complicates Donald Trump's argument that his conviction, again, by a jury of his peers, is a weaponization of the Justice Department by the Democratic Party, while this is not.
Sure. Conviction is going to be, I hate to make predictions, but a very, I think, likely potential outcome here. It is a tough case for trial for Hunter Biden, unlike the Trump case, which was rather complicated in how they ended up bringing this charge, having a form that is a misdemeanor, and what was the debate over what was the underlying crime and all of that. Here it seems relatively straightforward that this form was filled out wrong, or that he shouldn't have filled it out given his history of drug use. The defense recently got some bad news. The judge has ruled, this is according to CNN, that they wanted a witness to testify on addiction and make the case that, well, he just had gotten out of this rehab, so he might not have fit the definition of an addict at that time. That hinges on whether he was allowed to purchase the weapon. That witness is not going to be able to testify, according to the judge. Also, I'm not sure what the specific piece of evidence was, but a piece of evidence the defense wanted to use having to do with the form itself is not going to be used. So this looks like a tough one to win, frankly.
Yeah. Now, I will say that the advantage, again, it's a little perverse to have to look through everything through a political lens, but here we are. The advantage for the Bidens here is that it is not, in fact, Joe Biden on trial.
And it's not a public policy issue, and it's not related to election. It relates to, his own alleged criminal behavior and his addiction, and it is embarrassing, but he's not the candidate. He's not running for president.
It might even make Joe Biden look sort of sympathetic. There have been these moments in the past where people, I think, have taken swings at his children that are his, adult children that are a little too hard, and given Joe Biden an opportunity to come forward and be the kind of empathetic, kind of warm father that he, I think, genuinely is, and it's an overreach. It's a kind of a miscalculation by certain conservatives. So we'll see what happens there.
Maybe.
Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that his personal relationship with his kids or whether or not he's a good father has any
No,
bearing on whether or not he's a good president or should be elected.
I don't know. He's tweeting things like, in response to Donald Trump getting convicted, no one is above the law. But then at the same time, but my son, we tried really hard to get him a sweetheart deal that would have shielded him not just from this stuff, but potentially from much more serious investigation and prosecution into influence peddling that would perhaps have had some beared on Joe Biden's own reelection and public policy and what the administration is doing that made the judge go, wait, what? You want this? No, I cannot give you this. This is insane. So, no one's above the law except...
and then this is another, I'm sorry to keep bringing it back to this. This is another aspect of why the mixed messaging on Thursday was such a problem. No one's above the law. Donald Trump should have to face the consequences.
Yep.
My son, I don't know, it's a little bit different. I wish he got a sweetheart deal. And also, the United States is going to impose the UN's criminal court as they try to issue arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu for crimes alleged against him in Gaza. I mean, this is terrible mixed messaging for Democrats and Republicans alike, I gotta say, because Republicans have been posturing as a law and order party for decades and decades, and now they're saying suddenly we're all gonna become criminal defense advocates and pick up a Black Lives Matter flag and be like, you shouldn't have killed George Floyd, because now Donald Trump is in the position of the incarcerated person. And so, I mean, I saw friend of the show, Alayemi Olerin, wrote a piece, I think, in Teen Vogue over the weekend.
I read it, yeah.
Talking about how, don't become an enemy of criminal justice reform efforts just because there is an unsympathetic criminal in this instance, in Donald Trump, depending on your politics, obviously.
Right.
And I think that's an important lesson to keep here. But even from a political perspective, the inconsistencies between the parties, I think, do give credence to the idea that this is all very political, that you're happy with the corruption of the system or the weaponization of the justice system if it happens to benefit your guy. And I'm not sure, as all these millionaires and billionaires fight it out at the top, whether this is setting bad precedents for the rest of us who have to live with this system without the protection of money.
Yeah, I'm not in love with the government, going hard after people for filling out forms wrong.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of red tape that I complain about in the system.
And maybe that's an argument for Donald Trump as well,
yeah.
filling out forms. Now,
it's a
presidential candidate with the advice of counsel and all the power he has, intentionally filling out a form wrong versus as someone who is an addict and throws of addiction. I mean, these are not an apples to apples comparison here.
But filling out forms wrong is the crime the Justice Department pursues, not widespread wholesale violations of our civil liberties at the hands of our government.
100%. It's never war crimes.
Never war crimes.
If you start prosecuting people for war crimes, every president will be in jail. And
as
so none of the
Graham
presidents
said.
Exactly. And none of the presidents want to set that precedent.
Yeah.
And again, what would the decision making be if it were about the people making decisions that are going to inure to our benefit, instead of people in power wanting to make sure no bad precedents are set for when they come to rise up?
More Rising right after this.